Welcome to SoCalTech Interviews, where we interview the entrepreneurs, founders, investors, and others in Southern California's startup and technology community. Today, our interview is with two of the founders of Marina Del Rey-based Telesign, Ryan Disraeli and Stacy Stubblefield. I'm Ben Kuo, founder and editor of socaltech.com.
Stacy's usually the best at saying much simpler than I will.
So we do two-factor authentication, which basically means that we send those text messages with PIN codes that you get anytime you log into a website or you even register for a website.
Interesting. And how did you talk about the story behind how you started it? I mean, how did the whole company start?
So we actually started out of an incubator that was based in Beverly Hills. You would not have heard of it because it was very small. And we were working on a bunch of different projects actually when we first started at the incubator. So Telesign was the very first thing that we were working on, but there was a bunch of other little businesses that we started all around the same time. And then Telesign slowly over the years became the one that really took off. We got a large or relatively large client finally in 2008 after 3 years of chugging along. And that's when we knew that that was the business that we should be focusing on. So we started focusing on that. We at the time were doing only phone verification. We started adding in data analytics because of client demand. We added in some other things like just straight messaging versus sending PIN codes. And so that's sort of been the history.
And what were you guys doing before? I mean, how did you say, hey, we're going to start a phone verification company?
I was actually in school at the time. Stacy and Darren, who's the other co-founder that's not here, were just graduated from USC. All three of us went to USC.
Oh, okay. And what were you guys, you said you were in school, what were you majoring in? Or?
I was studying business with an emphasis in entrepreneurship.
Oh, okay.
So it's about 19 at the time.
Oh, yeah, really? Interesting. And so talk about Telesign now. I mean, you guys, I know you grew fairly large, and then recently, went through some acquisition. I mean, talk about the growth path. I mean, how did all that develop?
Yeah, sure. It certainly wasn't an overnight success for us. Even though we've grown from 3 employees to over 300, it certainly didn't happen overnight. And as Stacy mentioned, it took a little while for us to really attract top tier clients. Being a really small company going after security and mission critical type use cases with our customers, we would oftentimes talk to customers and they'd be interested in the technology and then due diligence on the company and realize that we were just a 3-person outfit operating in LA, and we really struggled to go acquire top tier clients. And so our first several years we really struggled in terms of acquiring customers, and once we were able to find one major customer, we were able to accelerate the growth quite rapidly from there, but certainly not an overnight success at all. It took several years to really even hire our first full-time employees for the company, and we really started scaling the business about 2009, 2010 until where we're at today with 300 employees, still growing quite rapidly, hiring both here in LA and across our international offices.
Now talk about that first customer. I mean, what enabled you to get that first customer on board? I mean, was there anything? Was it luck? Was it an introduction? What was it?
A little bit of luck, actually. Luck and perseverance. So we were certainly trying to go acquire customers, and Darren, Stacy, and I spent almost most of our time on customer acquisition, and everything from sending cold emails to sending things in the mail to making phone calls to going to conferences and walking around and trying to pitch people at their booth. But really, we were focused on customer acquisition. The actual first major customer was a bit of luck, in the sense that it was a major top 10 website in the U.S. at the time, still a major client and major website, but a very interesting culture in that they were a small company and really blended well with us culturally. And unlike these other major corporations that were looking at Telesign and turned off by us being 3 people, I think that was a benefit to us in the sense that, hey, we were young, we could relate to them, and they didn't care that we were a small company. They were open to working with us. So a little bit of luck in terms of the profile of the company, but certainly all of our time was spent on prospecting and customer acquisition.
Yeah, and I think it was also a combination of being persistent because, I mean, there were times when these guys specifically like would get a cease and desist letter from potential clients because they were so persistent.
These guys meaning Darren and I.
Yes. And then also being extremely customer focused because we always would go into client meetings as like, how can we help you? It's not just like, what product are we selling? It's very much like, what are your problems, and let's see if our product can actually help you solve those problems, and if not, like maybe we can come up with something else that can sort of, you know, augment what we already have. So we've been like that the entire time, and I think it's been really helpful.
Now, how did, you mentioned you guys were just 3 people for a long time. How did you develop all what you did with just 3 people?
So we were part of the incubator, and so we actually had some other contracted employees that were working and helping us develop the technology. And so they were actually a big part of the company for several years.
Now, did you guys take investment initially, or talk about the investment side of things?
Yes, so we had one major investor as the owner of the incubator, but we didn't actually raise outside money for quite some time, which is, I think, one of the interesting parts of our story too is that we were so focused on customer acquisition. We see startups now launching in LA and the Bay Area and throughout the country, and they're focused on raising money right away and perfecting their website, making their product perfect, and printing business cards with some flashy logo on it. And we spent all of our time on customer acquisition, and fundraising was something that we weren't actively investing in, which I think was smart because it meant we were focused on other things. We did ultimately raise money. We raised money to go acquire another company, but we didn't do so until we were already pretty profitable and raised a much higher valuation than we could have in the earlier days.
Interesting. Yeah, so were you able to fund your growth from all those customers?
We were, yeah. So we were profitable quite quickly and had a very low burn rate as well. And that enabled us to self-fund and grow very cautiously and smartly. And I think for us that benefited Telesign as well because the market was also catching up to what we were offering. And so if we had raised a ton of money very early on, we may have been investing more, but I'm not sure that the customers would have come much quicker than they did.
Interesting. Now, I think often, and especially some of the large companies you have, you think, hey, they're saying, I'm sure you heard this, hey, we want to just go build this ourselves. Yep. How did you get over that? The whole, we'll just build it.
Yeah, so it's a really good question, and I think for the first few years we were really worried about that actually happening. But it turns out that even if you do build it yourself, you still have a cost because you have to terminate the text messages or you have to acquire the data, whatever it happens to be. Like, there's still a cost at the end, so they don't actually save as much as it seems like they would save if they built it themselves. And the second thing is, it's just a very difficult business. The people don't always realize how difficult it is to actually send text messages internationally at scale. It's really, really hard, and we spent so much time perfecting the technology. We eventually got to the point where if one of our clients was like, hey, we're just going to go build it ourselves, we would just be like, okay, like, good luck. See you in 6 months.
We actually did have one major customer who tried to build it themselves.
Yeah.
That literally came true.
It didn't work out.
Really interesting.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, what in terms of international? I know that's one of the things that you guys do. I mean, what was the challenge with international?
So there's a bunch of challenges with international. So, and things that you would never think about. So whenever you're sending a text message, and this might get really boring, so you can always stop me. Whenever you're sending a text message, it actually ends up, in most cases, unless you are like a VIX, like the company that acquired us that has direct relationships with like 700 carriers. If you don't have that, then anytime you send a message, it has to hop through at least several places. So maybe through a provider, through another carrier, to the final terminating carrier. And every one of those points is a place that something can go wrong. So it could either just get totally lost, or it could get dropped on purpose, or it could get filtered for spam because the carrier thinks that it's spam, or like something could happen, like if it's a long message, it has to get concatenated, and part of that can go wrong. So maybe only one piece goes through. So there's just like all of these different things that can go wrong, not to mention the fact that numbering plans for phone numbers around the world are very weird. And so, especially in like South America, people will put in their phone number like it's a local number. but you actually outside of that country can't deliver to that number. So we have to transform the number, and most people don't know how to do that. So I mean, there's just like all of these little things built in that just make it possible to terminate at scale at a very high quality.
Interesting. How long did it take you guys to figure all that stuff out? I mentioned a lot of work.
Years.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, years, and like lots of data analysis, transactional analysis, and just digging in, talking, to people in the industry. Like it took forever.
That was all stuff we were personally involved in, and
Yeah.
high priorities. And as soon as we would get a customer, I mean, we were very customer focused, and as soon as you get a customer complain on something, we dig in and identify what's wrong, and we're able to rapidly correct that.
Right, interesting. Now, so you guys have been this now for what, 15 years ish? What is the biggest lesson you've learned over that time? I know there's probably a lot, but what do you think is the biggest lesson you've learned with building a company?
A bunch of things, but the one that always stands out to me is just staying balanced, and when there's moments that happen that feel like the company's going to go out of business, particularly early on. Luckily, we don't have those moments anymore, but the really tough challenges. For us at Telesign, all of those moments a year later were transformative for us in a really positive way. They forced us to do things differently. They forced us to innovate. They forced us to create new products in some ways. And so I think staying balanced in those tough moments where it feels like everything is going wrong, but looking at that as opportunity, and especially for us, really, every tough moment for us was such a positive force for something really well.
Yeah. On my side, I would say, sort of along the lines of what we've been talking about already, just having a very strong customer focus. I think that's a huge, I think that's part of the reason why we've been so successful over the years, and just making sure that whenever you're talking to someone, you know your audience. Like when you're talking to this client, what their main objectives are and what they need versus this client over here. So I think that's been a good lesson.
What have you enjoyed most about your entrepreneurial journey?
Oh man, I actually really like the ups and the downs.
I don't.
I don't know, it just keeps things exciting. And just learning a lot, every day is problem solving. There's something new, some new challenge that you have to learn. So it's like really expands your mind over time.
I mean, similar things like learning and developing, but also the relationships. Like Darren, Stacy, and I have such a strong friendship and relationship beyond just being co-founders, and I think that was pretty unique to our experience, where we had so much trust between us that Stacy and I can still go to a meeting and debate actively back and forth, where other people in the meeting are looking at us like is everything okay? And we're just like, yeah, it's fine. This is just we've built up enough trust and credibility over the years that just those types of relationships are been really valuable to us.
Now, is there anything you wish you'd known before you got started on this whole starting the company and being here how many years later? So
yes and no. I mean, in some ways it was actually for us, I don't know what Stacy's perspective is, but in some ways not knowing all the craziness and the ups and downs before you get into it is positive, and in many ways, I wouldn't trade the experience for anything, but if I knew everything I was going to get into at the beginning, I'm not sure I would have signed up for it. So in some ways, I think being a little bit naive was positive for us, but having said that, we made so many mistakes, but I think in many cases we were able to rapidly correct it and luckily not make the same mistakes multiple times. So there's probably too long of a list of things that I would do differently, but in many ways, not knowing was also a really positive force for us.
Yeah. Anything that I wish that I knew, I wish that we would have trusted ourselves a little bit more at the beginning, because at the beginning we felt like we were very young and we weren't sure that we knew what we were doing and da-da-da-da. And the longer you're in the business in general, you realize nobody really knows what they're doing. They're just kind of like, some people have more experience, but everybody's sort of figuring it out as they go. And B, I think we would have realized that we were pretty good at, solving problems and learning things rapidly and making good decisions, more or less.
Okay, so the last question for you is what are you doing now at Telesign? What's next for you, and what should we be watching for?
Yeah, so Telesign was acquired about a year and a half ago by Bix, and it's been an outstanding acquisition for us. We were independent, but we're able to leverage all of the assets that Bix has, which without boring you into details, it's really accelerated our product strategy and customer growth, and the company's really performing well. So we had a really strong Q4, really strong outlook for 2019, and hiring quite rapidly while we really are focused on innovation and adding new products, and particularly on the data and identity side, we've launched a new product almost every month towards the end of last year, and so it's really we're in growth mode, which is fun for a mature company that we still like to think we're a startup in many ways, but we're still growing, yet part of a larger organization